Good, whatever time of day it is. I hope this video finds you well. Today I'd like to kick off a game discussion series where I talk about, well, whatever game I'm playing. Not necessarily a review so much as me just blabbing because I like to hear my own voice. Today I want to talk about a game that definitely does not suck, since you can't go wrong with a Sierra game. In fact, it's one of the best Sierra games, and one of my personal favorite 90s DOS games. Conquests of the Longbow.
CD Talkie Edition.
Robin Hood, Conquests of the Longbow. Released in 1991, this game came out at the height of Sierra's golden era, when they were dominating in PC game sales. This was the second game designed and directed by Christy Marks and produced by Ken Williams after Conquests of Camelot: The Search for the Grail, an older title that I'll probably talk about another time. In the meantime, let's open this sucker up and see what's inside the box. Ah, a smorgasbord of goodies topped off with floppy disks. 6 of them in fact, and there was also a 5 1/4 inch high density floppy version as well. Up next is a Sierra game manual that's more substantial than anything you would get with a modern game, and this isn't even the book for the game. It's just got contact information for Sierra and general information on installing and playing point-and-click games. And my favorite of all toilet reading materials, the Sierra Game Catalog, inside of which you can read all about King's Quest V. How ironic. And Space Quest 4. That game was so difficult when I was a kid, it made me want to rub my eyes with rusty nails. And we have a brochure from Prodigy for their online service, which would now be completely useless. Ooh, look at that, a 9 Men's Morris board game. I'm not sure this little guy would be fun to play on. Maybe I'll give it a try sometime. Probably not though. And a sign-up form for Sprint. No thanks. I had Sprint once before and never got service in my location. Oh, look at that. A 16-color exchange form for people who bought the 256-color version and didn't realize their computer was a giant potato with no VGA. And at last, the manual. When you open it up, you're greeted by a reminder from Sierra: don't copy that floppy. Then we get some typical early 90s copy protection, followed by the story of Robin Hood, just in case you didn't already know it. And in case the first copy protection wasn't enough, there's more copy protection, after which there's more copy protection. Oh boy, Sierra, oh boy. Following that, we get more copy protection. Oh god. Finally, you get an explanation for all the minigame and arcade sequences that take place throughout the game, topped off by a bibliography from Christy Marks, who did a ludicrous amount of research in the development of this game. Alright, let's pop in that floppy and get this game installed. And we're quickly greeted by a bug that's being caused by my processor, which is quite a bit faster than anything that existed when this game was developed. Now this game and other Sierra titles from the time would sound significantly better through a Roland MT32 rather than the Sound Blaster 16. However, I just don't have one. Maybe someday I will. Now I think Conquests of the Longbow is one of the best point-and-click games ever made, for very deep reasons that I'll get into later. Before that, let's get through the basics and the story of the game as presented to you by the poet Troubadour named Troubadour, who verses us in the medieval happenings of Nottingham. Much beloved King Richard is returning from the Third Crusade but gets captured by King Leopold of Austria, who holds him ransom for 100,000 golden marks. Meanwhile, back home in England, upon hearing of King Richard's capture, his black-hearted brother Prince John swore that he'd never go free. Prince John conspired with the infamous Sheriff of Nottingham to overtax and abuse the citizens. But they didn't count on an outcasted and outlawed thief living in Nottingham Forest to foil their plans. His name was Robin Hood, and along with his merry men, he seeks to restore Richard to his rightful throne by raising the ransom by whatever means necessary, all while feeding and clothing the poor. Now let's finally get into the main game, and we're greeted by Robin Hood living in his cave with some kind of strange whiplash disorder. This is yet another bug caused by running these games on a much faster processor than they were intended. Thankfully, there are fixes available on the Sierra website. Link for them is in the description below. And finally, let's get into the game. Here's Robin Hood living in a cave down by the river, hiding from the sheriff. As you can see, the game has a very simple UI as expected by Sierra point-and-click titles. Up top you have your score, which is affected by things you do or don't do. It also shows how much of the ransom you've collected and how many outlaws you have on your side who will fight in later sequences of the game. You can also walk, talk, and click on things, all with the use of your mouse. Now look at that, this game uses low-resolution VGA graphics and only a 256 color palette, but they managed to make the environments look like a painting that you would expect to see over your grandparents' couch. Very relaxing indeed. And coupled with the beautiful environments is a very sublime soundtrack topped off with oddly ambient, dissonant noises all throughout the game. Either that or my sound blaster's tripping with the Bradys. You may need to have headphones on to hear it, but just listen closely. Those are some wacky noises. And let's head out into the world. Alright, that's slow. Pro tip number 1, go into your menu and turn the speed up as high as it goes to overclock your computer by a factor of 10. For those of you who aren't familiar with the icon-driven interface, it's very simple to use. All you have to do is bring your mouse up top, and from left to right you have walk, look, touch things in the environment, talk to people, murder things, and fast travel. On the right side you have a bag for your inventory, the menu to save, and some helpful tips. If you hit the fast travel button, you get a map showing the game's many locations, some of which include a monastery and the city of Nottingham. Now for me, the icon-driven interface was very intuitive and a massive step up from the old text parsers that Sierra Adventures before this had used. You can click to navigate, click to talk, and click to crush your enemies and hear the lamentation of the women. Don't mention it, lady. Conquest of the Longbow is broken up into 13 days. Each night Robin returns to camp to recount the events of the day with his merry men and to plot the next day's events. These sequences are well executed and work toward developing the plot and characters while giving the player a clue what he or she should do the next day. On the first night, after drinking copious amounts of alcohol and passing out, Robin gets carried to bed by Little John. In his drunken hallucination, Maid Marian, who we don't know at this point, is dancing gracefully amongst the willow trees. She leaves behind an emerald which Robin picks up in his dream. He wakes up and the emerald is still in his hand. Most people who drink just vomit, but this guy wakes up with gems in his hand. How nice. Now you may not believe this, but later that day Robin Hood encounters Maid Marian being attacked by a monk. Robin promptly destroys the monk and saves her life. Maid Marian thanks Robin by taking off her slipper and promising him that there's more where that came from. Young me could barely contain myself with these suggestive themes. I tried my darndest to earn the rest of these so-called rewards. I won't belabor the story too much because it sticks mostly to the tried and tested Robin Hood lore. You probably wouldn't be too surprised to learn, however, that you can steal from the rich, give to the poor. You can even have a meeting with the President of the United States and then go on to meet the two guys from Andromeda. Shoot, I even bumped into the creator of this game inside of the game. Weird. And if you want, you can disguise yourself and take part in an archery contest that was totally not designed to lure Robin Hood into a trap. I won this by splitting the other archer's arrow in half, because I am the most amazing shot in history. Totally not scripted at all, I say. As if those features weren't enough, you can even turn yourself into a tree. Okay, well this isn't normal Robin Hood, and it appears Christy Marks took some creative liberties and added quite a bit of druidic elements into the game, but hey, it adds a whole lot of fun, and makes up most of the copy protection, so that's a thing. One more interesting aspect in this game is the arcade sequences. In this particular one, you have a fight with a monk. Now, the manual does explain how to use the numpad to do a large amount of attacks and dodge moves, but I've always just spammed the left mouse button because I'm an idiot and never really read the manual. Thankfully, that's enough to get you past this scene. By this point, you realize there's a lot to this game, so I won't bother you with any more. Just kidding, there's also a part where you have to play this dude in a game of 9 Men's Morris. Yes, the whole board game is in this game. 9 Men's Morris is a 2-player strategy board game dating all the way back to the Roman Empire. Place your pieces one player at a time on the board. If any player gets 3 pieces in a row on the board, they have what's called a mill. They can then proceed to take 1 piece away from their opponent, minus some caveats. Once all pieces are placed, players take turns moving pieces to adjacent points one at a time to create further mills. No flying. Knock your opponent down to 2 pieces and you finally beat this insanely good player, who I absolutely hate. There's also an arcade slider in the menu that can make the game go from stupidly easy to completely impossible. However, at the default setting, this 9 men's Morris match is difficult enough. If you really like the game, maybe you would turn the difficulty up, but all it did for me was teach me how sucky I am at games of intelligence. Oh, thank God. Just give me the stone, you lughead. The riddles can also be pretty difficult, if not impossible, if you don't have the book. One mistake, and you will be murdered, and your ugly corpse thrown into a marsh, never to be seen again, while your merry men lament the fact that you have a pirated copy of this game and did not read the book. For those of you who get this on GOG or find a copy without a book, you can now get this information online, link in the description below. Here's another difficult riddle that got me stuck for ages. I read the manual on the toilet about 100 times to no avail, until me and my brother snuck a paid phone call to some video game hotline to get an answer. Hints to solve some of the riddles are in the book, but others are hidden very well inside of scrolls in the game itself. You need to be very mindful of the small details in this game, or else you will die. I know, I made it sound very tough, but it's not. I beat this as a kid, so it shouldn't be too difficult for an adult, right? Eventually, you'll reach that boat, and you'll have reached your goal and will marry the babe. The end. Nothing ever comes that easily, Robin. You may also be captured and probably even hanged for your misdeeds. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said this was one of the best point-and-click titles, and the reason why is easy. While the story and dialogue are mostly linear in that Robin and his men basically always make it clear what the intended good path of action is to follow, there are alternative routes that you can take to get through the game by going against the grain. I remember playing this game for hours and hours with my brother and laughing hysterically over all the ways we could find to get Robin killed. It was always tons of fun playing this game over and over and purposely making the wrong choices in an attempt to screw the playthrough up. I love getting Robin killed in silly ways or just plain embarrassing him by cowering away and allowing a corrupt officer to murder an innocent woman. Definitely not the intended path, but it was obviously accounted for because the end-of-day discussions with your men at camp would ultimately lead to your merry men making comments about the events of the day, and Robin would express his embarrassment and shame. And for the MGTOWs amongst us, you can even stand back and let Marion get bludgeoned to death. It actually lets you continue on in the game after that. Well, until day 3 when some dude decides to bash you over the face with a hammer for letting her die. But close enough. And last, but certainly not least, is the legendary bad ending, which I've never managed to pull off before today. I've tried on and off again for years and I just couldn't get it to happen. I know just about every negative thing you can do in this game and somehow never managed to get the bad ending. I even followed a guide and beat this game 5 times in the making of this video, but it just wouldn't happen. Even if I ended the game with a negative score, it still wouldn't happen. Finally, on a whim, I got my hands on a newer copy of the game, and lo and behold, I got the bad ending. This leads me to believe there was an updated version of the game with the bad ending added later. Either way, I've finally done it. The ultimate playthrough. Many dead, including Marion. I bullied the poor, and walked away while the innocent were cut down by corrupt officers. And my reward? Ordered hanged by King Richard himself. This is the happiest I've ever been to die in a video game. So that was Conquests of the Longbow, and while I do love this game very much, I can definitely see that it's not without its flaws. Places where you have to wait without knowing you're supposed to wait, and difficult puzzles that require you to navigate the manual, if that's even enough to help you figure them out. But if you're willing to put the time in to learn and get through the negatives, you can uncover what I believe to be one of the greatest point-and-click adventures of all time. I'd highly recommend grabbing the GOG version of this if you don't have it. It is a shame that the Conquest series didn't live on after this. However, the existing games still have a following many years later, and maybe one day Christy Marks will come back and make a new retro-style game. Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick did do Thimbleweed Park recently, and that was well received, so I wouldn't mind more new retro-style games. For those brave few who made it this far, I thank you for watching. Now get off your butts and do something productive. Don't put it off till tomorrow, life is short. As for me, I'll be back with more videos. I have my Windows XP installation coming up soon, and I would like to review Conquests of Camelot as discussed earlier, but I just have one little problem with that. The floppy disk doesn't fit into my computer for some reason. It would appear the BIOS on this Tualatin rig does not support 5 1/4 inch drives either, so I will have to try to figure that out somehow. If only I had a 386 or something more time period accurate. Grumpy Tomato signing out.